Hello and welcome to Local Knowledge with me, Jeremy Lander. This is a programme that tries to get behind the scenes and look at features of local history and local interest. And this week we'll be looking at windmills, and I had a very exciting trip to Wicken Windmill on a very wet but fortunately windy day. Hello there.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Jeremy. Are you Dave?
I am Dave.
Hi, Dave. And the sails are turning.
Yeah, the wind is supposed to pick up.
Yeah. Gosh, it's wet though, isn't it? I'm here with Dave Pearce and James Winter, and we're going to go up into the mill now. You might be able to hear the sails are turning and the gears are turning, so it's all very exciting. And Dave and James are going to tell us about how this windmill works.
Which floor are we going to?
Ideally, I think we go up top.
Going up the ladders to the top. It's an enormous wheel turning just by my head, banging my head on the beam, which I did last time I was here. Do I carry on up?
Right, so this we go up one more level, James. Mind your head as you go over the top of the ladder.
Yeah, I've already hit my head once.
Yes, there's more fixed bars, which at least you can see in this bit. And they protect you from things like rotating wheels.
Yes.
Better idea.
Okay, here we are, up at the top. So what's going on here, Dave?
Well, this is really the gearbox, where the drive from the sails that are going round just above us, out at the front, is taken through the big vertical wheel, drives onto this almost as big horizontal wheel, which then takes all the power down through the windmill to all the different machines.
Yeah. And this was an important, well, I was going to use the word revolution, that's a bit of a pun, isn't it? In windmill design, wasn't it? Back in the, gosh, medieval times, was it, when they invented this way of turning that, you know, because before the sails went around on a kind of vertical axis, and then they changed it so with these gears that enabled them to harness the wind more effectively.
Yes, the propeller style of windmill, if you like this one, or a modern wind turbine, seems to have been a northwest European invention. May even have been invented in England, but nobody knows.
Yeah.
Way back, but the earliest windmills appear in this country in about 12th, 13th century. They are smaller, much more primitive versions of this, really. There's 1,000 years of development in this, more or less. But the big thing about this windmill is that only the very top of the mill turns to face the wind with the sails.
Right, so the whole thing rotates.
Above our head, our level is fixed.
Yeah.
So earlier mills were what they called post mills, where the whole body rotated around a vertical post.
Yeah. So what rotates the top?
Well, you can either do it by hand, very arduously, but there is a second small windmill up at the top, at the back of the structure, called the fantail. It's about 12 foot diameter in old-fashioned money, and so in my terms it's quite a small one, but when you get up there it looks really big. Anyway, that is set so that when the wind starts to veer out of the mainsails, the little fantail catches some of the wind, whizzes round, drives lots of gears, and is set to haul the whole of the top of the mill round, one way or the other. And it does that very effectively. We leave it to run whenever we're not here, so that the windmill sails are not always faced into the wind.
Yeah.
So the most expensive weather vane in Wicken, I'd say.
How old is this particular windmill? Do you
We
know?
believe it was built in 1813.
Okay.
We haven't got any documents.
And was there one here before, do you think?
We don't think there was, oddly. It's a new build. We think there was a windmill in the distant past in Wicken, at another end of the village.
Yeah.
But this seems to have been a new site, and it was built at a time when a lot of mills were being put up.
Was it true that at that time there were a lot of exploding windmills because of the metal teeth?
Oh, I hope not.
That's something I heard. Is that true? That when cast iron came in, they started using metal teeth for the wheels, didn't they?
Well, it is true that in this mill we don't have any mating iron wheels to wooden wheels.
Right.
Iron teeth, wooden teeth. But I think that was unlikely. We tend not to get the big concentration of flour dust in the air, which you need for an explosion.
Yeah.
So it's a danger in big modern mills where there's so
it's still
much
a
more
danger,
intensity.
Right. Yeah.
But we do take the precaution of running with the windows open usually.
Okay.
But today it's running so slowly and pompously.
And you've got lots of sacks of grain here. James is sitting on a pile over there. Dave, you're leaning against a great pile.
Yes,
where does this grain come from?
Well, the current grain that we use comes from corn merchants in Lincolnshire. So but it comes from all over the east coast, really. We use what they call bread-making wheat, by definition. This is also what they call hard wheat.
Yeah.
It's quite hard work for the windmill to grind, in fact, but it makes by far the best flour for bread. And the distinctions between different classes of wheat for us are interesting because they're very traditional. There's bread making, there's biscuit making, and there's animal feed, which is about the cheapest.
And all different kinds of grain.
They're different varieties.
You pour the grain down a chute here, don't you?
Yes, James will show you. There's a bin that we fill up.
Yeah.
And that gives us enough grain to run the mill at least for a morning.
Yeah. And are you milling at the moment?
It is.
Perhaps we could go down and have a look at
Let's do that.
The millstone whirling around.
I'll go first, shall I?
Okay, here we are with the millstone.
This was the most important floor for the miller.
Yeah.
With his 2 sets of millstones. This one, which is just about running, hardly any wind, is running on organic wheat. The other set behind us we use for things like spelt, rye, any other interesting grains that people want.
Yeah. And there's an enormous piece of stone here.
Yes.
What kind of stone is that?
Well, it's deceptive because what you can see is actually plaster of Paris on the top. But the working face of it is what they call burstone. This is a mystery what it is. It famously comes from France, from the Marne Valley, and I went as far as asking the British Geological Survey what they thought it was, and I gave them some samples, and they said, well, it's freshwater quartzite, so there you are. So it's basically a very hardened form of sandstone.
Oh, okay. But it's not granite.
It's not granite.
Right.
You can use granite.
Yeah.
And you can use all sorts of other hardish stones.
Yeah. Oh, the wind's picking up again.
That's it.
So we're now milling.
Yeah.
So the grain is dropping into a hole in the middle of the stone.
Yes.
And then it's, I guess, just by centrifugal force, is it? Sort of spreading out underneath the stone?
That's right. The grain feeds down into the eye of the stone. It's important that the grain only feeds essentially at the rate that the windmill's going. And it's a very cunning device that as the mill speeds up, this funny forearm shaft, which delights in the name of the damsel, we won't go into why that may be, but that shapes the chute, and the faster the mill runs, the faster the grain feeds down in.
Yeah.
Once it gets down into the iron stone, it's drawn outwards, as you say, partly by centrifugal force.
Yeah. Is there another stone underneath?
There is.
Yeah.
So there's a fixed stone underneath and a rotating one on top, and between the two, the corn is crushed and cut into flour. And if you're doing it right, by the time the grain gets to the outside rim of the stone, it's flour.
Yeah.
If you're doing it wrong, it's a mess.
It's really going hell for leather now. Are there times when it's too windy and you have to sort of shut it down?
There's times when you think, if I don't shut it down now, I might not be able to shut it down. That's the principal thing. It has all sorts of safety devices. Back in the early 1800s, it was very high technology, see, and see how it does pick up. That's that when the wind speed doubles, the power goes up by 8 times, so that's why it needs to be controlled quite carefully. Well, we'll see when we get down.
You can feel the whole structure is vibrating.
Like a ship at sea here.
Yeah. Ship of the fence.
That's right.
Right, we're one level up from the ground now, and we've got our bag here, which is
Fairly full.
yeah.
So we must change the sack, get a new one.
And where does this flour go?
Well, immediately it's bagged up here. It's either sold to villagers, visitors. These days it's really, we like people to contact us first before they come because of the COVID.
Yeah.
But it's also sold by Daily Bread, the ethical supermarket in Cambridge.
Oh, I know it. Yeah.
There's another Daily Bread in Northampton. And from time to time we sell through the Streatham stores. So, and we usually sell via the National Trust in Wicken and Anglesey Abbey, but at the moment this COVID is making a mess.
Yeah, sure. When was it restored? When did you start operations?
We started at the end of 1986.
Oh, a while ago.
When we were
And almost
even younger.
continuous operation since then?
Yes, well, we all had ordinary jobs then. And
you were an engineer?
Yes. Well, we used to reconvene at least once a fortnight to have a day on the windmill.
Yeah.
And at that time, the expectation was that we wouldn't get it working. The worry at that point was that the whole thing would collapse rather than any niceties of working.
Yeah.
We had no sales.
Yeah.
Generally run down over the last 40 years.
And you get sort of big structural forces that are going to cause cracking and so on in the brickwork, I guess?
Yes, I mean the biggest forces clearly come from the sails, especially in a storm. But even when they're working normally, they're 5.5 tons right at the top of the tall building.
Yeah.
Tall wooden building, and the forces can be interesting.
Yes.
But as I keep saying, there's 1,000 years of development in this, so as long as it's looked after, yes, it's basically pretty sound. Touch wood.
Then Dave took me to the forge, a wonderful place round the back where they make their own metal components for the mill.
This is what, did you say, Dave?
I call it the fiery furnace.
The fiery furnace.
It is the smelter, if you like, the melting aluminium or bronze.
And this is for making bits to repair the windmill.
Yes, it's for making traditional castings. Today we're hoping to make some small pieces for the new sails at Branston Mill. And if we...
And why aluminium? Because I was thinking of aluminium as being sort of quite sort of soft and... is it man enough for the job?
It's not a bad engineering material at all. Has the great attraction that we can melt it here without excessive temperatures.
Yeah.
About 660 centigrade is the melting temperature, and you know how easy it is to melt a saucepan on the stove if you leave it empty, or used to be. We can't summon up the heat here to melt iron,
Right.
so that's much hotter.
Yeah.
We can melt very small amounts of bronze for making bearings for the windmill and so on. But we've done an awful lot of aluminium casting over the years, and we're only now picking it up again after about 20 years, if the truth's known.
Right. So you had to refurbish this thing to...
Well, we've built this from scratch.
Right.
Well,
Does it run on coke or coal?
It does run on coke. We'll open it up in a minute, but that whirring motor is the equivalent of the big bellows.
Oh, the fan.
Which is the
Right,
fan.
okay.
So it looks as if it's going out. It does. Is there any heat in there at all, Bill?
Yeah.
So thank you to all the guys at Wycombe Windmill for their hospitality and for showing me around, to Dave and James and Elwyn and the others. They're all volunteers and they're doing an amazing job maintaining such a wonderful heritage asset and producing flour for us, which is an incredible thing to be doing, especially at this time when flour can be in short supply. And being inside a structure like that in the wind, it is amazing. Dave said it was like being in a ship at sea, and it really is. You feel the force of the wind going right through the structure and being harnessed. So quite an extraordinary experience, and thank you to all of them for that. And then I took myself off to somewhere a bit closer to home, Burwell Windmill in the centre of our village here. It was a volunteers day and I went up to the museum and had a look round to see if I could find anybody. Ah, I hear voices. Oh, hello. I'm looking for Alison. Alison, hello. That's all right. It's such a big place, isn't it? It's I saw doors were open. I thought someone must be here.
Yes. Well, I mean, the office is very nice, but it's...
I didn't realise that was
impossible-
the office. Yeah.
It's almost impossible to describe to anyone. It's like, well, often I'll say, get to the windmill, and then I'll come and find you there. But
Right.
yes.
Well, it's very nice to.
And you're doing history
to meet.
for the Burwell radio.
That's right. Yeah. So.
You know, we have quite a lot of it here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna become a real nuisance here.
No, we are very happy because we still have people in Burwell who say, oh, I didn't know this existed. Oh, you know, it's quite a large windmill. It's not that secret.
No, well, quite, and it's the highest place in the village, isn't it?
Yeah, but then people get put off and say, well, I was in the middle of a housing estate. It's like, yes, so is the windmill. That's all right.
Yeah. Should we have a look inside?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello. People working on this, as you can see.
Are you going to be able to keep
Yeah.
working during this second lockdown, or are you going to have to shut the place up again?
So volunteering, I think the government have decided they can't do anything about volunteering.
Right.
So actually, if you are volunteering, you are allowed to do it. We have all of the precautions in place we've had since the start of lockdown. Being a windmill, it's very well ventilated.
Yes.
And most of our jobs are outside. So
Well, that's great.
the kind of collections volunteers, a lot of that's being done at home because it can be.
Yeah.
But if your job is to fix the windmill,
Yeah.
you can't take it home.
Yes, we would love to take pictures of it home, but we can't.
Yes.
And what are you fixing at the moment? Are these bits of windmill that I see here, painted in a beautiful creamy white? Sorry, what's your name?
My name's Andrew. I'm one of the volunteers here. I have now been volunteering for 7 years.
Right.
What we've got here is the 6 blades that will form the newly rebuilt fantail.
Ah, and that's the thing that turns the top around, isn't it?
Yes, that's the little device at the back of the mill which turns it to face the wind. So we've got 6 of them. We are at the moment building new spokes, and as soon as that's finished, she'll be able to turn to the wind again.
And then will you be? I mean, do you ever mill flour here?
Yes,
mill
we
grain?
do. We
Yeah?
are 2 of our 3 pairs of stones are capable of grinding.
Right.
One is the original stones from the 1860s. The other pair is newly restored. We brought them just over a year ago. They are Victorian, but are repurposed for this mill.
Yeah.
So 2 of our 3 pairs will work, and we can grind.
So next year sometime you'll be grinding.
That is the hope. Yes.
Making flour again.
Yes, that is the hope.
Fantastic. So what you have to fix the fantail, and what else? What else do you have to do? The spokes, did you say?
Yes, the spokes attach the blades to the hub of the fantail. Once they are, we've had to commission 6 new ones, as the originals were 30 years old and had reached the end of their life.
Yeah.
Once the fantail is recommissioned, as you've probably seen, the sails are currently empty. We have 192 shutters which operate like a Venetian blind.
Yeah.
We are in the process of taking them out, checking them, and then restoring them and putting them back.
Yeah.
Which they were freshly made 7 years ago, so we are now starting the cycle again.
Because they must take quite a lot of punishment.
Yes, they do. This mill is in the highest point in the parish and does face the oncoming storms. So yes.
Yeah.
But failure is very rare.
Yeah. And how old is this windmill?
This windmill is 200 years old this year. We celebrated.
Oh, happy birthday!
Yes, we were going to have a big celebration, but in the end we had to do a more toned down one. But yes, she's 200 years old. But the site is much older. We have records of mills dating back to the 1200s.
Wow.
On in and around this local area. One mill blew down in the 1700s. And then we had a bit of a surprise. 7 years ago, when we restored the mill, we discovered a second mill hiding under our floor.
Huh.
So when we restored the floor, we found the foundations of a second mill we didn't know about, which was quite exciting because they're a different shape to this mill. They're octagonal.
Ah.
So it's a previous mill we didn't know about, which we are now trying to find out more.
Yeah, but it would have been built of stone, like this one. This is stone, but brick on the outside.
Yes.
Right?
No, this one is stone all the way through.
Oh, okay.
It's a local stone called Clunch.
Yeah.
It's mined in the village.
Burwell's made of it.
Yes. Yeah. We are one of only 2 mills left in the country that is made of it.
Ah.
And we're the only one that is Clunch all the way through.
Right. But then it's painted black. Is it rendered and then painted black?
Thickly
on the
rendered
outside?
and then tarred.
Right.
Old-fashioned tar to keep the weather out.
Yeah. What is this type of mill? Is it
We call it a tower mill.
a tower mill? So do you think the one that you discovered, the foundations, was also a tower
We're
mill?
not sure. It could either have been a tower mill or a smock mill. A smock mill, there are examples at Wicken, Soham and Swaffham Prior.
Is that when the whole thing turns?
No,
or-
that's a post mill.
Ah, okay.
Smock mills are like tower, but they're partially made of wood. So the base is brick or stone, but then the tower is made of wood. So it's 2 materials. You're thinking of a post mill, which the one before that was... We found the foundations of very early post mills when they built the housing estate around the mill.
Yeah.
So way back in the 1600s and before, they were post mills. But then as technology improved...
Yeah. So that's interesting, because this is the highest point in the village. It's got a history of windmills, because that's where you
This
want
has
to build
actually
a mill.
been called Mill Field since at least the 1400s. Because in the medieval system, the parish had fields named after something prominent that was in them. So this whole area, before it was built houses, was called the Mill Field.
Right.
So it's always had a mill in it since it was named.
Yeah, and I seem to remember from the open day about 18 months ago when we had a tour, which was fascinating. The guys were saying that the building of houses and so on creates turbulence, and it doesn't work as well as it would have done in the past when you just had open fields.
Yes, it does affect it somewhat. We are lucky the houses are not too close like some mills. But yes, the building of the houses does now affect the wind. We believe it may have lost about 20 to 40% of its power.
Wow.
It's because it's not just the blocking of the wind. It's as the wind hits the houses, it begins to turn and spin.
Right.
So it doesn't hit the sails flat.
Yeah.
And means the sails don't revolve as fast.
Yeah, yeah. How many people work on this?
On the mill itself, we have about 5 at the moment. We're always looking for new volunteers. Big sale there. Yes, we're always looking for enthusiastic people who wish to help, who wish to keep the village history alive.
Yeah.
And we're always looking, no skills needed. We're just looking for enthusiastic people to come along and
Yeah.
join us.
Well, hopefully through this programme we can find you some more volunteers. So a call to action there. Your local windmill needs you. Big thanks to the volunteers at Burwell Museum for showing me around. I'm now taking myself off to Foster's Mill in Swaffham Prior to talk to Jonathan Cook. So I'm here with John Cook at Foster's Mill in Swaffham Prior, and we're standing inside the mill. And is this a tower mill, John? Is that what they call it?
It is indeed, yes. This is a tower mill which actually sits on the site of earlier mills. Certainly one mill before this, and I wouldn't be surprised if more. So we're actually sitting, or rather standing, on a artificial mound which the tower mill has been built on. The artificial mound was actually built for the post mill that predated it, and when my predecessor was repairing the mill in the 1980s, he excavated the floor and found the 4 brick piers which supported what was known as Galley's post mill, that was taken down somewhere about 1855.
Right. When was this? When was this built? Then?
And this was built 1858.
Right, and it's brick. Yeah.
It's brick on the outside. It's got a brick skin, and then in common with many buildings around here, it's got clunch on the inside. So not actually an ideal structure for a tower mill, but of course our friends at Burwell Mill have just got clunch and don't even have the brick skin. So we always think we're a little bit one up on Burwell because at least they added some bricks to the outside.
Yeah, I think there must be a bit of competition between you millers in this area, but we're very replete with windmills, aren't we? And operating windmills in this area.
We're very lucky. I mean, we have but a small number of the mills that existed. In fact, in 1850, 1860, it was reputed that you could see over 35 mills from this mill here in Swaffham. So they were, of course, pumping drainage mills as well as corn mills. I can't quite remember, and my friends from Burwell will probably chastise me, but I think we were talking about 5 windmills in Burwell alone at one time.
Yeah.
So, yes, this was an area, of course, but it's a great grain growing area, if I can say it.
A lot of grain to be milled.
A lot of grain to be milled, and therefore the mills remained for longer.
The breadbasket of England.
Well, yes. I mean, Burwell itself has some varieties of wheat which were associated with Burwell alone.
Wow.
So, yes, it very much was a breadbasket.
Yeah.
And as a result, the mills were popular.
You're on a high point here, and you're slightly high, as you say. You've got a mound, but I mean, for a flat landscape, I was struck walking around Swaffham Prior just the other day. It's actually on quite a hill for round here, isn't it?
It certainly is, yes. We are one of the highest bits of land. Not quite the highest bit of land around here, but certainly coming off the fen and, coming from winds from the east, we do really, really well. The wind is able to hit the mill. These days, unfortunately, interrupted by a few houses, a large water tower.
And the water tower,
Indeed, yes. I'm not quite sure what the council was thinking of in the 1930s. Well, I know what they were thinking of. They were thinking the windmill would be long gone and the water tower would still be in use.
Yeah.
Well, the water tower is still in use, but the windmill itself, amazingly, had a change of fortune.
So is that on the kind of prevailing wind side of the mill?
It is, yeah. So it does really get in the way and significantly impacts the wind that we get from, as you say, the prevailing direction.
So you wait for an easterly wind and then you start.
We like an easterly wind. Somebody said to me, there's not a lot between here and the Urals, and so when we get an eastern wind, it's a very steady wind. It's uninterrupted. One of the great things is that we have a slice of open country on the northeast side here, so that when the wind does come from that direction, it's a really good, strong working wind.
So how often would you say? How many days a month do you mill using the wind?
Using the wind, I think we're probably in the region of 5 to 10 days a month, something like that. Basically, if we're here and there's wind, we're milling with it because it's free. We produce a lot of flour, so unfortunately we have to use electric power to produce quite a proportion of that. But that's the only way we can meet our market, which is literally across the UK.
Yeah, because you have to supply on a regular basis.
We have mail order, we have direct customers coming to the mill, we have restaurants, we have bakeries, we have online stores that are all taking our product. So it's a serious business.
Yeah, And I was in the queues back in March and April for the
You
flower.
certainly were.
And here we go again, lockdown 2. What, do you think it will be? The shops will be better organised, and you won't have the queues this time, or what? How do you think it'll pan out?
The shops, I think, are better organised.
Is there suppliers
The supply
rather
chain.
than
It was
shops,
the
isn't
supply chain that was the problem. Quite simply, the supply chain is designed to produce a certain number of bags an hour, and therefore it was only able to cope with normal demand. And all of a sudden, demand went AWOL because people wanted the control, and equally people were at home and so wanted things to do things with the kids,
Yeah,
etc.
all that baking. Yeah.
So that was great. We met lots of new customers, literally from throughout the UK.
Yeah,
We had people coming from
including me.
London. Indeed, we did. I don't think it's going to be the same this time because, as I say, the just-in-time delivery system is better equipped, and of course the kids are also still at school. But actually, our mail order has already ramped up significantly on top of
So
a
how
very
far,
new
how far
normal.
do you? What's the furthest you send?
Penzance
Flour.
and Northern Scotland. So it sits on a carrier, comes in virtually every day and picks up boxes.
So why are people that far away wanting? Is the flour so special that they want it from here?
I think it's fair in saying that we've got quite a reasonable reputation,
Yeah.
and people recognise that we produce a good product.
What's special about it?
I'd like to say, because I spend a lot of time trialling and testing the wheats that I then buy, and then that provide us with the grain that we then work with throughout the year.
Yeah.
So
And does it
people-
come from round here? Or?
where it's all possible, yeah. We're milling wheat from Lincolnshire at the moment, and this coming year we're going to be taking crop from near Huntingdon. But there's a lot of work that goes into testing, sometimes a bit of blending, in order to get the kind of quality that bakers are really looking for. And so I'd like to think that we're now, we're recognised for doing that. And it's the feedback. That's the thing that's important to me. I ask my customers for it. They tell me how they're getting on with their flours, and we respond to that.
What's your most popular type of flour?
White flour, our white bread flour is by far the most popular, but equally we do a whole host of specialty flours, and we've got quite well known amongst the real bread sort of aficionado, artisan bakers, etc. So the 13 different varieties that we produce all have sort of different niches that people buy for.
And when did you come here? When did you start?
So I've been here 22 years.
And was the mill not working at that point?
The mill was in a working state. My predecessor, Michael Bullied, whose wife still lives in Burwell, had done a fantastic job at restoring the mill to working order. It started grinding again in 1992, which was a really great step forward. And so I was very lucky in being able to take advantage of the work that Michael had done. That's not to say there's been a huge amount of work since then. Mills, like any building, need regular repair, maintenance, and wood doesn't last very long, and it's in a very open and exposed place. So yes, we've had new sales, new stocks, new shutters, and a lot of work internally to keep working with. The sales get painted.
What's the last thing that you had to do?
The last thing that Michael had to do.
Well, the last thing you had to do.
The last
What's
thing
the
I
most
had to
recent
do.
repair?
Well, literally over the last few days, we've been patching some of the tar on the outside of the mill. The water, unfortunately, penetrates through the tar into the bricks, and in the winter, just as with any building, we get frost heave, where the water freezes and then pushes pieces of the soft Cambridgeshire brick, or Burwell brick, I think quite a bit of it, off the mill, and so we have to patch that with a very soft mortar, just to try and keep the water out. I was interested when I read an assessment of the mill that was done in the 1890s, early 1900s, and the millwright that was looking at it commented that the mill suffered from damp. And I thought, yeah, you're damn right. Still does in 2020. So these problems are problems that the mill has had throughout its history, and we just have to work with it. So yes, I was out with my tar brush last week.
Does that mean you have to be careful about where you store your grain and your flour? Does it get damp?
If it was in here long enough, it probably would. But
you mill it, you get it out.
We're bringing in about just over 4 tons of grain a month, and it goes out pretty much it goes out in that period, so it doesn't hang around very long.
Yeah, amazing. Well, good luck with this new lockdown, and hopefully, as you say, it'll all go a lot smoother than the last time. But you'll
Maybe find some more customers if you can cope with them.
If we can cope with it, we're having some fun as it is, making
Yeah.
sure we can meet everybody's
Yeah.
needs. But that's a nice problem to have, and we really appreciate the business.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much, John. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Pleasure.
So thank you very much to all of the people that I met in our lovely windmills that surround us here in Burwell. We really are very fortunate in having such amazing things right on our doorstep and producing flour. So, put in your orders and volunteer as well. Certainly Wicken and Burwell could do with your help. Thank you very much for listening, and tune in next week to Local Knowledge.